If you feel like what you've heard so far applies to you or someone you care about, you may want to find someone who is trained to talk to. The first place you may want to look is SASH.net. The Society for the Advancement of Sexual Health provides a list of trained individuals, groups, and other resources. There are many forms of potential treatment. Someone who is trained can help you choose what is best for you.
I know in my own journey, I was totally broken. I was diagnosed with cervical cancer caused by a sexually transmitted disease, had multiple surgeries, I lost a marriage, my life totally fell apart. And for me, I felt hope when I dared to tell my story to another woman. She wasn't a clinician, she was just a friend. And all she said was, "Oh, Marnie, I am so sorry." That's it, just, I'm sorry. She heard me in my worst moment and she accepted me. And I thought, And then when I walked into a therapist's office and I told the story again, and she said, "I know what this is and I can help you. And there's a whole body of literature that's being written about this." And I thought, okay, someone knows how to help.
And you begin to feel not so alone.
And I began to feel not so alone.
The greatest resource is SASH.net, the list of people who are in the organization who understand addiction and compulsion.
And there at that website, people can find not only information about the disorder, but they can find treatment professionals, treatment providers.
So what do you suggest for people when they're looking for a therapist? What questions would be helpful for them to ask the therapist?
Well, certainly to find somebody who has some experience with this and some specific training.
I would ask a therapist, are you a member of SASH? Are you a member of ITAP? Have you received good clinical training in this area? What's your model of addiction? What is your model of sexuality? Do you view this as a behavior-based disorder, as a brain disorder, as a trauma disorder? All of the above, something else. How many others have you treated for sexual addiction or sexual compulsivity? Are you a neophyte at this, or is this a focus of your practice?
And what about the internet as a resource?
The internet's a double-edged sword, because if you look up sex addiction, you're equally likely to get a whole list of sex sites as you are to get sexual health. And I think that's one of the greatest difficulties, because it's so readily available in terms of the things that they don't need. It's sifting through and finding the things that they really do need and the resources that they do need. It's sometimes difficult.
I think people empower themselves by asking questions, asking about financial resources. How much is it going to cost? Do you have sliding fee scales if you're financially strapped? Do you take insurance? All those types of questions are fair questions. I also encourage people, though, to realize that you're interviewing someone in this process, and that you may not necessarily go with the first person you meet. It's okay as a clinician, if I have someone who asks, I would like to meet with you to see if we fit in terms of our personalities, in terms of feeling safe. First person you meet may not be that person, and that's okay.
I guess my best advice to the sex addict is to get help now. Don't delay. These are such painful matters, and people report after even the assessment for, that I've told my story to you for the first time, or I've said things here today that I've never told anybody before in my life. And just the act of doing that creates a tremendous amount of relief and a dissipation of shame. And that's one of the most healing things a person can do, is to get help immediately.
I think it's critical in the beginning to work individually, to get your feet under you, to get an understanding of what's going on, to get your story out and understand your story, to begin some level of recovery. So if you can't do more than that, start there.
As the individual who struggles with this, or the clinician who's trying to help that person, we need to know that talking about this issue is the key to freedom.
I think the toughest part of treatment is helping the recovering sex addict or hypersexual person to understand that that behavior has to stop, but the goal is not deprivation. So coming out of that notion that this is not about deprivation, this is about learning how to eliminate the dysfunctional behavior and consequences, and eventually replace it with something that's much more positive.
So you, like others, have mentioned that this is a long process. So we've heard 3 to 5 years, 2 to 5 years.
It is a long process, but that doesn't mean you're going to be in therapy every week for the next 3 to 5 years. That doesn't mean that you're going to be struggling every day for the next 3 to 5 years to keep from going back to those problematic behaviors. But it does mean that there's a great deal of work that takes place, concentrated work, in the first 3 to 5 years. And then after that, I believe there needs to be vigilance for the rest of a person's life.
I believe that the most helpful thing you can do would be to talk about what you most don't want us to know. That was true in my life when I was a client, and frequently, literally every week, somebody will pick up on that and say, okay, you said, they'll point over, you said, talk about what I don't want to talk about, and I need to do that. And maybe it's been triggered because somebody else had shared something that they didn't think anybody else would do, but just a reduction, and it comes from just being open in the area of sharing with the group.
It's what we call a process group, where people are really talking about their feelings, how each other are impacted by the other. So there's an opportunity to really learn what it means to set boundaries, to understand how, for example, I behave in relation to you, and if you do something that offends me or hurts me, we have an opportunity to sort it out with a group of people that are supporting us.
And ideally, for those just beginning, is to get them into some kind of 12-step group, whether Sexaholics Anonymous or Sex Addicts Anonymous, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. There's plenty of opportunity in most communities now to enter into some kind of group forum. It's important for that individual to identify a sponsor, somebody that can come alongside of them and help them to work through the 12 steps.
You can typically find somebody that has similar story to you or has similar life situation, and they can be there for you 24 hours a day typically. Most people talk to their sponsor at least once a day initially.
Is there one 12-step recovery program that's more suited or aimed at the gay population and another?
Sexual Compulsive Anonymous, SCA, came out of that need for LGBT people to have a space to express themselves, to be comfortable. It's not limited to LGBT people, but it is the place designed for that openness and the flexibility. And in most areas where SCA is active, that's where people tend to gravitate.
I think that intensives provide an opportunity for close bonding and expedite the process. So when someone gets an intensive, they're doing a full day of therapeutic activity. Their focus is on getting well. They're not distracted for that period of time from work and groceries and broken water heaters and life that happens. By going away and focusing on an intensive, the person has an opportunity to expedite the process of recovery.
If a person can't manage their sexual sobriety, as we call it, in an outpatient setting, then it's often a good idea to go into an intensive outpatient program or into a hospital setting.
It's one of the most nurturing things you can do for yourself when you're at that point in life where you're not managing life.
It's really important that the family gets help for themselves.
Right, because they've been traumatized too.
They have been traumatized, and it's just painful. And as the addicted person gets better, then the family members may find themselves now dealing with their own experience because the focus has changed.
Right.
Bringing in the partner and spouse is very important early on. To have that person aware of what's going on, even though terrifying, and oftentimes there's a lot of reactivity with that, trying to keep that a secret and be in recovery perpetuates the very same thing that brought the addict in the first place, of having secrecy, of keeping things from those that they love and care about.
And for the partner to understand that this is a road that they have to walk down together. Oftentimes the partner will say, well, this is your problem and you should go get help and I didn't do this. But the truth is there's a system, and that system includes the partner and even children. So if somebody decides to stay with their partner who's a sex addict, They usually say they stay because they love the person, and if they love the person, they have to get into their own treatment as well, and they have to make it something that they do together and view it as a positive, not a negative.
I've been surprised, actually, over the years that we've never had within the family somebody drumming out a member of the family because a person was honest about dastardly deeds and horrible things they've done.
I guess the thing that I hear first is there any hope? I tell clients that, you know, my job is to tell you on day one that there is hope. Ultimately, that the goal is to lead them to freedom, but freedom doesn't come on day one. Hope can come on day one. Hope that they can stop their behavior, whatever it is.
With a trained clinician, they can sit down and really tell their stories and not feel the shame. In fact, what they're going to feel is a sense of relief. They're going to feel a sense of safety. They're going to feel like they have a way out. And that is one of the most important things, is that aspect of hope.
There will always be something that we can't resolve and that there will be a longing for. So becoming comfortable with that notion that culturally it's not black and white. I don't have to fix all the problems. I have to deal with myself, and I have to do what is in balance for me, and let other people be comfortable or uncomfortable as they choose.
So at times, Bill, somebody will ask that, in fact, frequently, do you actually believe that you can help? Not can Ralph help, can we in our field do something that can make a difference, and to be able to say, yeah, that we can, and it's nothing magical, and it does require, as I look at it, a partnership with therapists and the client, that if you do your part and I do mine, then we can actually make some progress and begin to see things be different.
While the thought of getting help is daunting and terrifying, but the payoff is something that is likely beyond a person's wildest dreams.
The wonderful thing about going through a recovery process with sexual addiction is you can have a rich, fulfilling life in a way that many people don't touch on during their lifetime experience.
And so it's not just repairing their whole lives, but actually improving.
That's right. It's the resurrection experience, that it's about rebirth and being able to really look at what's next. Where to from here, God?
People have transformed their lives. I mean, truly have transformed their lives from what it was to something better.